All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to crack the code on an incredibly complex analytical system that's built entirely around a lottery. Now, hold on. This isn't about how to pick winning numbers. Not at all. It's about something way more interesting, peeling back the layers on this amazing attempt to find order in what should be pure random chaos. Okay, so let's dive right in. Our case study here centers on just one day, April 18th, 2026. And this is the system's briefing for that day. It's just filled with all this dense jargon, and it calls the day a triple clean day, which, what on earth does that even mean, right? Exactly, right? Breakthrough, cluster. You look at this and you'd think it was some kind of secret intelligence report, not something for the lottery. It's totally a puzzle. And like any good puzzle, there's a key to solving it. So if we're going to solve this triple clean day mystery, the first thing we have to do is learn the language. We got to understand what the system is even talking about. All right, so here's the absolute foundation. Everything, and I really do mean everything in this system. It's all built on this one core idea, the 22 cycles. Just try to picture this. You take all 1,000 possible lottery numbers from 000 to 999, and you sort them into 22 different groups or buckets. That's it. That's the core idea. And you can see right here how that played out on our specific case study day. So on April 18th, out of all those 22 possible cycles, only these 3 were active. The day's winning numbers came from just cycle 17, cycle 4, and cycle 5. Pretty interesting, right? Okay, so knowing about the cycles, that's just step 1. To really crack this code, to actually understand what words like breakthrough and cluster mean, we have to dig into the rules this system claims govern how these cycles move around. See, the people who built this thing, they didn't just group the numbers and call it a day. No way. They came up with 6 core movement laws that they believe actually describe how these cycles behave over time. Now, one of the most important laws, you really got to get this one, is what they call gap pressure. The best way to think about it is like a pressure cooker. The longer a cycle just sits there, dormant, not hitting, the more what they call analytical pressure builds up inside the system. And this chart shows you exactly how that works. Look, a tier 1 gap, maybe a week or 2, that's pretty common, happens all the time. But a tier 4 gap, where a cycle has been quiet for over a month, well, that's a statistically rare event. And it's that rarity that creates the super high pressure and basically flags it for analysts, saying, hey, pay attention to me. Okay, the next big rule to know is the cluster window. It's pretty simple, actually. This law says that right after a cycle hits, for a very short time, there's this window of opportunity where it's statistically way more likely to hit again. And check this out, it's not just a flat chance. The system's own data suggests that the probability actually peaks on the 3rd day after a hit. It gets all the way up to a 32% chance of that same cycle showing up again. So obviously, that 3rd day becomes a really critical moment for anyone following this. All right, so now we have our keys, right? We've got the 22 cycles, we've got gap pressure, and we have the cluster window. Let's head back to that April 18th briefing and see if we can finally unlock this thing. Okay, first up, the 2 p.m. draw. The result was 484, and we know that number belongs to cycle 17. Now, think back. What did the briefing call this one? It was a breakthrough. So why a breakthrough? Well, because it had been 31 days, a full 31 days since cycle 17 had last shown its face. And what did we just learn? A 31-day gap? That's a high-pressure, tier 4 event. So according to the system's own rules, when a massive gap like that finally breaks, it's not just a normal result, it's a breakthrough. Boom. Puzzle piece number 1 solved. And the other 2 draws from that day, they followed the rules perfectly. The 5 p.m. draw came from cycle 4, which had just hit the day before. That's a textbook cluster, right in that window. And then the 9 p.m. draw? That came from cycle 5, which closed out a simple 12-day low-pressure tier 1 gap. The system just calls that a return. Simple as that. And there it is. That's the solution to the whole puzzle. All that complicated jargon, it was never about predicting a win. It was about classifying the wins. The reason it was called a triple clean day is because it was a perfect, clean, textbook example of this system's 3 main event types: a breakthrough, a cluster, and a return, all happening in a single day. So, okay, we've cracked the code. We understand the language. But decoding all these terms and figuring out the April 18th puzzle, it naturally leads us to the one question I know you're thinking about.
After all this incredibly detailed, almost obsessive analysis, does this system actually predict the winning numbers? Can it tell the future?
Well, let's just look at the system's own numbers. According to their own documents, the historical accuracy for predicting which of the 22 time cycles will show up on a given day is 33%, a 1 in 3 shot. And remember, that's just for the cycle, which is a whole group of numbers, not the single winning number itself.
And you know what? The creators are actually super upfront about this. There's this quote from one of their internal essays that just says it all. Gap pressure increases analytical attention, not certainty of delivery. It's a brilliant line. In other words, the whole point is to tell you what to focus on, not what will happen.
And honestly, that's the real takeaway here. This whole thing, it's a tool for analysis. It's not a crystal ball. Its true purpose is to quantify how rare an event is and give it some statistical context. I think a great analogy is weather forecasting. You're not predicting with 100% certainty, you're finding probable patterns inside a giant chaotic system.
You know, this whole distinction between predicting something and just finding a pattern, it kind of brings us to a final, maybe more philosophical question about why we even do this. Why are we so driven to find patterns in the first place?
And maybe that's the real secret here. Maybe this whole incredibly complex system wasn't really built to find the right answer for tomorrow. Maybe it was built to force us to ask better, more interesting questions about the information we have right in front of us today. It's something to think about.